How destructive is your mouth? Did you know that the mouth, which is, the Bible talks about it as the tongue, can bring life or death? Proverbs 18:21 says, the tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. Those who love to talk will reap their consequences. If you speak many words, you start to stumble and you start to fall into the trap of speaking evil. For you see, James 3 tells me that no man can tame the mouth. No one can tame the tongue. Because if we actually had full taming of the tongue, full control, you would be a perfect man. Why? Because the things that flows from our mouth controls our life, in fact. It controls what stream we go down. So there's a big destructiveness of the tongue, because in James 3 also tells us that sometimes we can praise the Lord and the Father with our mouth, and the same mouth we use to curse another who was made in the image of God, which is each and every one of us. And so both blessing and curse pours out of the mouth. So you see, discernment is this. Use the wisdom that God give us and try to keep our mouth under control, silent. Because if you really want to know the godly from the ungodly, you don't have to squint your eyes and look too hard. In fact, if you have a quiet spirit to sit and not speak so much, but listen more, you can tell who is a believer from an unbeliever. You can tell who is wicked from who is nice. You can tell so many different things just by listening to people speak. So how destructive is your mouth? Because you see the mouth speaks many lies. And lies, a deceitful mouth, is one of the sins that God detests the most. He detests a lying tongue. So when I look at the Psalms, from Psalm 52, Psalm 120, it tells you about the tongue. About the foolish and the wise, in which use the tongue for two different things. Because Proverbs 12:18 says some people make cutting remarks. So some people use their tongue to cut down, destroy. But the words of the wise brings healing. So that means the wise thing to do with our mouth is to build up, not to destroy. Now, Proverbs 52 says, why do you boast about your crimes, great warrior? Don't you realize God's justice continues forever? And all day long you plot destruction, your tongue cuts like a sharp razor. You're an expert at telling lies. You love evil more than good, and lies more than truth. And just pause there for a moment. You love evil more than good, and lies more than truth. Sorry. You see, if you lie more than you tell true, then you go down the path in which lies bring. The path of death, sin, the path of destruction. And this is why a lying person is more evil. Because if you love to lie, you love evil more than you love good. That's the path you go. You love to destroy others with your words, you liar. But God will strike you down once and for all. He will put you from your home and uproot you from the land of the living. Now, this is talking about judgment day. But the righteous will see it and be amazed. They will laugh and say, look what happens to mighty warriors who do not trust in God. They trust in their own wealth instead and grow more and more bold in their wickedness. But I am like an olive tree, thriving in the house of God. I will always trust in God's unfailing love. I will praise you forever, O God, for what you have done. I will trust in your good name in the presence of your faithful people. So lies bring destruction. Lies form your thoughts. I'm not even talking just about lies, but the deceptiveness. The deceptiveness of speaking evil forms your thoughts, your emotions, your heart of stone, your behavior, and you become an evil person. I mean, imagine, think about how much power is in the tongue and the fact that it does bring life and death. Is that if you speak negatively, if you have poor self-image and you speak negatively about yourself, to yourself, how depressing do you become? How hard is it for you to love yourself? How much do you have a twisted image of yourself? And then think about how much it makes you not just criticize yourself, but other people. Because you start to be more comparative. You start to find fault in others that you see in yourself. You see, this is how powerful the tongue is. The spoken words that come from our mouth. And I will talk more about in James 3 because it tells us that this little member here, even though it's a small member of our entire body, not the largest, it is the most powerful in the sense that it controls everything else. Because it tells of the character of the heart. Because both good and evil flows from the heart, and what flows from the heart is what flows from the mouth. For Jesus tells us, and in Colossians he also talks about it's not what you put in you, like it's not about if you eat pork or not pork and all of these religious things. It's not what you put inside of you that defiles you, but it's the thing that comes out of us that defiles us. So the things we speak, right? So the tongue is an important piece for us to be concerned about how we speak. Is every other word from our mouth a curse language? If you read Proverbs, it tells you what kind of a person just curses. Now, Psalm 120, it talks about being in trouble because of the lies that comes at you, that you must go to the Lord to be rescued from such people. He says, I took my troubles to the Lord. I cried out to him and he answered my prayer. Rescue me, O Lord, from liars and from all deceitful people. Because what do liars do? They form deceptions. But what do they do as they do this? They lead you astray. That's what lies do, lead you astray. The enemy use lies to catch us, to trap us, to lead us away from God's ways, away from what's good, away from his blessings. All of these things by deceptions and lies. And so lies lead us to ruin. O deceptive tongue, what will God do to you? It says, how will you increase your punishment? He will increase your punishment. You will be pierced with sharp arrows and be burnt with glowing coals. how I suffer in a far off Meshish. It pains me, he says, it pains me to live among such people. He says, I'm tired of living amongst people who hate peace. Because a lying tongue does not hate peace, does not like peace. It stirs up quarrel. It causes disruption. Wise people search for peace, speak of peace, but the lying, deceptive tongues try to bring war. Try to bring war. Before we get to, James 3, 1 Peter 3, 10 to 11 tells us, if we want to enjoy life and see many happy days, he says, keep your tongue from speaking evil, your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and work to maintain it. So that means that we have to actively try to tame our tongue. Be not quick to speak. Be slow to speak. Discern what will be coming out of our mouth, whether it is of the truth, the whole truth, or not. Because God's eyes, the Lord watch over those who do right. That's what the verse 12 says. The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right, and his ears are open to their prayer, which means to do right is to do righteously. So he watches over the righteous, but he turns his face from those who do evil. He says, he will hear your prayer for doing good, for doing what is right, for speaking what is true. Let me get some water here. Speaking what is true. Now, James 3, 1 to 12 tells us about the control of our tongue, taming our tongue. In other translation, it will talk about. It says, dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. Right? Indeed, we all make mistakes, many mistakes, in fact. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. We can control ourselves in every other way if we had control over the tongue, which means the tongue controls everything. If we could control ourselves in every other way, we'll have self-control over every other way in our life. It means the tongue has a lot to do with not having control over a lot of things in our life. That's another way of thinking about that very statement. It says we can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in his mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go. So that means the tongue is the navigator of the path in which we will take. He says, even though the winds are strong, the rudder turns it. So the rudder is like the tongue in this situation. It says, in the same way, the tongue is a small thing. Think about the ship and the rudder, right? Think about the ship and the rudder. How big is a ship compared to the rudder? So the small thing In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on a fire. Imagine. You want to know that this is true? Think about people such as Charlie Kirk, who spoke so boldly about fearing God, about a nation turning to God again, about looking at sin in the face, about so many things, right? It caused such disruption that one who would rather hold on to evil and lies killed him, right? He set the entire nation on fire. On fire. So this tiny member here can cause a lot of disruption. And he says, and among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. So the tongue starts either a building blocks that helps to build things up, encourage, or it rips and destroy and break down. So the words we speak matters. The words you speak to your children matters. The tongue, it says, is a whole world of wickedness, which corrupts your whole body. It corrupts your whole body. It can set your life on fire, it says, for it is set on fire by hell itself. The tongue is set on fire by hell itself. It's a flame, a continuous flame. You see, a flame can burn things down destructively, or it can bring warmth. Warmth. Isn't it so? Comfort. We can tame all kinds of animals and birds and reptiles and fish and so forth. But no one, he says, can tame the tongue. The tongue is restless and evil and full of deadly poison. It's always ready to speak and fight back and ready to attack, go on the offense. But to train it up is to bite our lips. Don't say the very thing that is spurling up inside and stirring up inside. Keep silent. Let it, that flame, if our mouth is a flame, to tame it is not to speak. It's to keep silent, that the fire will get no oxygen, that the fire will be put out. He says sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. And so blessing and cursing comes pouring out from the same mouth. Surely, brothers and sisters, this is not right, he says. This is not right. Do a spring of water bubble out both from, fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives? Or a grapevine produce figs? No. He says, no. And you can't draw fresh water from salty spring. So if your mouth is salty, if your mouth is quick and ready to curse, your mouth it needs washing out. You need to wash it out with fresh water, because you cannot draw fresh water from a salty spring. So we must take control over our mouth to be godly people. For God not to despise us. Despise what would come out of our mouth, for it is anger. He angers the Lord, because he says it's one of the things he hates the most is a lying tongue. So we have to work on speaking the truth, and to be able to do so, we must bait the tongue, keep it quiet, listen more than we speak. That's a great lesson, even for I.